Murphy from Independence Business Consulting. This is another in our series of speaking with an expert. We're going to talk today with Brad Tiernan from Draught Horse Brewery. We're going to talk a little bit about his process. He and I were introduced a few years ago. We went through a process of refinancing some bad debt and then went through the process of doing a partner buyout with him and just some cool stuff. He's got a really, really cool place here, as you can see. And he's a great example of A, entrepreneurship, B, SBA process, and C, just kind of going through that process with Independence Business Consulting. So Brad, first, I guess, let's talk a little bit about you, your background, how you started, why the name Draught Horse. And it's so funny that everybody always gets that wrong. Every lender I've ever dealt with, anybody I've talked to about this place, it's Draught Horse, or, so tell me about that background first.
Well, let's start with the name. The Old English spelling of draft beer, and 50-50, maybe 60-40, call it drought.
Right.
So,
I gotta admit, I did it first. When I first met you.
You know, it's kind of cool. The phone calls we'll get up here, and you'll hear somebody say, "Hey, how do you pronounce it?" And then we say it, and you hear the whole office start laughing. The brothers in the background start laughing.
Right.
You owe me a beer now because you got the name right.
Yeah, drink every time somebody mispronounces it.
We have draft horses, and we've always been into horses in general.
When you say we, your family.
Yes, my wife and I.
Yeah.
And now we have kids, and we've introduced them to horses, so we all have horses.
I know you and I we were trying to finish a deal up one time. You were on vacation on a horse, and we were talking. So we had to get some stuff done. I had to get back to 11. So that's impressive.
They were asking for a lot of items.
Yes.
And he's heard the hoofs of the background probably more than once.
Right.
In some of our conversations. Yeah, I did have a red ear that day from the.
It's a great thing as you're bouncing me out, but yeah, that's funny.
Yep. So we had draft horses. We did a little play on words, and we wanted to have a unique name, so we just called it the Draught Horse Brewery. And from there, everything just came together as far as decor and everything, because my wife had all kinds of, as you'll maybe see later in this video, some saddles and some of the other decor is just like these horseshoes that you'll see around the brewery are actual horses' shoes.
Okay.
And,
so on horses that you took them off, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So and then as far as how getting into brewing in general and wanting to open a business, this really stemmed back from undergrad, and when I was in school, you're just like, all right, I always want to own something, but I don't know what. I'm just trying to get my feet wet here and there and trying to figure out what really sparks my interest. And it wasn't until late undergrad, like graduation time, I started brewing with a friend in the kitchen on a pot, with extract brewing, and we just graduated up into what's called all grain brewing, is what commercial breweries do.
Okay.
And it became an obsession almost. We were just, as many times as we could, we'd be brewing beer. So fast forward a little bit to graduate school. Every project that they have you do usually focuses on a business. My undergrad was in business management, and then I got the MBA in finance.
Okay.
So it kind of just trying to be well-rounded as far as later in life and business.
Right.
So when we were in graduate school, it was like every project had to do with this place.
Right.
So just when you're building a business plan, and I knew it wouldn't be perfect, but I knew I would have so much information to use for myself or to get investors or whatever. And by the end of it, I had a lot of paperwork, I had an MBA, and I knew that I wanted to brew.
Okay.
So at that point, I knew I wasn't going to just snap my fingers. So at that point, I said, I need commercial experience. So I started calling around, talking to different breweries and people that I knew, because I was working at country clubs at the time. So there's people who know people.
Right, sure.
Anyway,
A lot of connections.
Yeah. So we started down. We had a little internship at Motor City Brewing, Multi-Dog, which is no longer there. And then the biggest commercial experience I got was with Saugatuck Brewing out in Douglas, near Saugatuck.
Yep.
They really walked me through everything, and I got to basically make the trip out there half a dozen times, and It would let me do everything from start to finish, and then feel really good about it, share some numbers with me.
Well, and it seems like, so I've done multiple breweries at this point, in the last several years, and it seems like there is kind of a fraternity. You all share with each other, you all promote each other. I think you've sent me multiple clients that I've since gotten done, but you'll always kind of, hey, come on in to Draught Horse, check it out, and it sounds like probably that stems from it happening for you.
Sure.
You're kind of paying it forward as well.
Absolutely.
Right? There is that little bit of flavor that almost represents the city, the town, the area. They found something they like brewing it, and you guys are always, it seems like, mad scientists, whether it's here at home or you and I have conversations all the time where I'm like, Brad, all I can hear is brewing equipment in the background. Oh, I forgot. Because you're always back there doing that type of thing. It seems like everybody has their kind of signature flavors and things.
100%, and you have to really adapt to the market. I didn't want to sell hard seltzers, for example,
right?
Because I don't like them myself.
Sure,
but does it make sense not to? Especially when it's one of the highest margin items
exactly
for profits. So yeah, of course,
right? Yeah, that's just good business.
And as far as pricing and other flavors in the market, you really do have to look very locally to find out what they want around here, because this is going to be what keeps you going.
Right.
When you start getting people traveling, making this a destination, which most breweries do, depending on where they are, especially if you're in an expressway or something. But no matter what, you're still getting people to travel out. So you have to have a wide variety, and then you have to hone in and find out what the local are really going to adapt to. So
you got to that point where you had some people help you out. You certainly sounds like you prepared. Even unknowingly, it sounds like to a certain point. And then it was time to open up. It was time to go out and get funding. Talk a little bit about, that was before you and I knew each other. You went out and you did what entrepreneurs need to do. You figured it out.
Sure.
Whatever it took, you made it happen.
With a lot of turns along the way and bumps and bruises.
Right.
But I started recruiting small scale investors the way I did. There's obviously a few different ways to do it. So I wanted small scale investors, so they all just had a small percentage, because there's certain liquor control rules and everything else. They want to stay below certain percentages so they don't have to have guarantees and everything.
Right.
So as far as really recruiting these guys, it's the same as trying to find really good employees. You have to talk to 20 to find one.
Well, and what I often tell clients is it's a marriage.
Yeah.
So you want to have that courtship. You want to make sure that it's the right partners. There's dumb money. I'll write you a check and I'm out. There's smart money, which I know we've talked about you doing that for other breweries. Hey, I'll invest, or I'll be a part of it, and I'll mentor you. And then there's interference money. Some people can cut a check for a little bit, and then they want to help dictate how things are run, even though they have no business doing it.
So I happen to be very fortunate when I didn't have people dictating with the small scale.
But I think that process of you dating and then eliminating the ones you didn't want brought you to having the right ones.
Sure.
Don't you think?
Absolutely.
Which is it's a great lesson for anybody. So often when clients come to me, they don't have the money, the injection money, and we'll get into financing a little bit here in a second, but there's injection money. A borrower always has to bring so much money to the table before the lender will lend. Okay, I don't have that much money, how do we get past it? And that's when we talk about investors, we talk about gift money from family or friends, all of those things. But you did it the right way. You eliminated anybody you didn't want to marry, and then the relationship was good when you did bring that money.
And being the small scale, they didn't feel like they needed to come in here and dictate.
Right, they weren't putting $1 million on the line. They were putting a little bit of money that they could afford to gamble.
And then learning curve, fast forward to after we've met, the way we would have done it is with a triggered buyout or something, so we didn't have to go through the negotiations when you want to buy out your investors.
Right. Again, you did what had to happen to get up and running, which again, I can't stress that enough. An entrepreneur they're going to find a way. They're going to eat macaroni and cheese for the next year. They're going to do whatever it takes because they know it's going to work and this is what they want to do. As a serial entrepreneur, I know it, I've been there. You have to have, there's a term for it. It's unrealistic confidence in yourself, where nobody else necessarily believes it, but you know it's going to happen. And now you're sitting here today in a good position. So one of Brad's investors came to me and said, hey, again, like Brad said, put a little bit of money in this, really, don't have any day-to-day. Brad's a great dude, this place is awesome, wants to expand. So, okay, I'll call him up. So you and I sit down, and the first thing I want to see is the numbers. Nothing else matters. We can talk about expansion, plans, all that. None of it matters until we see today's numbers. And then we looked at those numbers, and they were not fantastic. Okay, I want to run a marathon. All right, but you weigh 300 pounds, and you've never trained for a marathon. Okay, let's get into a program and lose some weight, start running a little bit, run a mile first, and then run 10, and then you can get to that 26. So then we formed a game plan. And part of that game plan was you had some debt on there that didn't make sense. And I find this a lot. I love to look at people's balance sheet. It's like doing blood work on somebody and saying, ooh, we need to clean this up, your cholesterol's high or whatever. So we started looking at your balance sheets and it was, all right, let's clean this up, let's clean that up. And we went out and we did a refinance. And I guess the biggest thing we did was you had a lease.
That was the building.
Yeah, you had a lease on this building and you had a buyout opportunity within that lease. And that is when we did the numbers on that. And so often people think that, well, I can't afford to buy a building. Okay, so you're going to lease a building. Oftentimes, so that lease, if you do a leasehold loan, it's probably over 10 years. If you do a loan with real estate involved, it's amortized over 20 years. So your monthly payment's actually lower and you're building equity every month. So we found that to be the case when we got this done. We were able to buy it out, and then you were able to do some additional improvements.
When the stars really aligned, we had the deal after 5 years. They were required to sell it to us for X price.
Right, it was a predetermined price within the lease.
Right, so at this point we're at 4 years, and or I believe we were coming up on 4 years.
Yep.
And we really wanted to work out the deal with them. But that gave them a little bit of the upper hand to be able to say, okay, well, if you want to buy it now, you're going to have to pay this much.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, just more negotiations.
Right.
And, but the stars did align because the price was still good based on appraisal. And
the value had gone up considerably from the time that
from
price was
2000,
negotiated.
from 2014 leading into 15 when we opened.
Yeah.
14 was when the original negotiations came about, that it came to where they wanted to lease it rather than sell it.
Right.
And we weren't going to do all the improvements if we were going to be leasing for it.
Sure.
So we had that deal in. Once we agreed on price and got the appraisal, we were going through the SBA process. This is when there's a lot of the areas of the SBA. Oh, we can't roll the SBA into SBA, and there's all these different.
Right, you can't pay off an SBA loan with an SBA loan.
Right, so we're almost done with our original construction loan plus our construction loan increase.
Right.
But those are close to being matured, and that'll open up a little bit more for different things. And then we finally, after lots of talks with Dennis, lots of talks with the underwriters and portfolio managers, got everything in line to work. And I tell you what, that day in June, signing those papers was one of the best feelings. That and buying out the investors. There was two main times. Well, I'd say three. Opening, obviously.
Right, sure.
Great.
Right.
When you pour that first beer that somebody pays you for.
Right. It's like having a baby.
Yeah.
It's finally brought into the world. And now
Yeah.
it's real.
Yep. And then the signing of the building, and then lastly signing off the investors. And I'm sure there'll be more along the way, but
and now we are looking at expansion and doing some other things.
We're expanding here.
Right.
Wide, as tall as we can
Yep.
within the property. Again, that's a lot going on right now with just materials and trades and just getting the folks to come out and work. Sometimes is tough in itself.
Right.
But knowing people is huge. because that has been a bigger payoff than Googling builders or Googling mechanical trades. And it's not just mechanical trades near me. It's like really reach out within networking groups, within your friends and family. Hey, do you know anybody who's good at this? And even if it's not that person, sometimes you'll talk to that person and they'll lead you down the line to find the right person. And when the stars align, you can get some work done. It just takes a little bit. It was a process, but at the time it feels just like the weight's coming down on you. But I do feel at the end of the day it is a just process. They don't want to lend to everyone and anyone.
They want to be paid back.
Right.
So and we had this conversation at the beginning, our first phone call, and I have this conversation with every client. When I know that, it's not going to be conventional loan, they have to go SBA. So often people will say, oh, I've heard about SBA, it's a really difficult process, it takes a long time. The answer is sometimes, and when somebody says, well, how long do you think that's going to take? My response always is, that's not up to me, that's up to you. And Brad is a very, very happy exception because Brad literally can bring up anything I ask for on his phone and have it emailed to me within seconds. That is not always the case. So we have to go through with clients. However, that's what IBC does. We do take you through that process and we let you know there's going to be some pain getting there. But the SBA it was created to promote small business. It's the Small Business Administration. That's what SBA stands for. So they will give approval to things that wouldn't get approved otherwise. So the SBA will either partner with the bank on an SBA 504 or on an SBA 7A that we did here. They'll guarantee the bank's loan up to 75%. So it incentivizes a bank to do that. So yes, because of that, the government's involved and there's more paperwork and oftentimes there's redundancy and it's asked for multiple times. However, you get the loan, you get the money you need. And oftentimes people will say, well, a bank won't lend me money unless I don't need it, essentially is the old cliche. No, it appears that a bank is being difficult. A bank is a business as well. They need to be paid back. So we talk about debt service ratio. Oftentimes the debt service ratio means, we want a 1.25, meaning $1.25 coming in for every dollar going out. And if your projections or your current numbers show you're at a 1 or a 0.9, you're losing 10%. Why would we give you additional debt for that? However, and that's what I'll do with clients as well from a consulting standpoint. Come in, clean them up, get them to a point where, all right, this loan will now get them to a 1.25 debt service. So it's not just a guy sitting in a room arbitrarily saying, no, we're not going to lend you the money. It's prove to me that you can do it. Show me your business plan. Show me what you've done to date. And if it makes sense, absolutely, we'll do it. And it's always a pain in the neck process. But like you said, one of the happiest days of your life was when we got to that closing table. And we did. You took ownership of this building and we refinanced some bad stuff off. I assume you'd say it's worth it, right?
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Like I said, when you get to the end of it, like, okay, I do understand why they're asking for X, Y, and Z. It's just the time that it takes and the redundancy, because you have to ask again because it's been more than 30 days since a particular document.
I gave this to them already.
Yeah.
I know. They're asking for it again.
Yep.
And there's, so we like to think of ourselves as kind of the Sherpa leading people through that process. And, our tagline is, we've been there so you can get there. So, I've owned a ton of small businesses. I've helped countless people through it. And again, one of the conversations I have at the beginning is this is going to be painful. It's probably going to be more painful than you even anticipate. And I know, we're talking, you're shaking your head, you're saying, I get it. There's going to be a point you come to me and say, come on, you said it was going to be difficult, but this is pretty difficult. Gotta bear with me, gotta grind through that. And then, I get cards and emails and thank yous and, couldn't have done this without this process. It was so worth it. So I think that's something that anybody who's watching this video and kind of getting tips on SBA, Is it an easy process? No, but if it were easy, anybody could do it. And if you don't have the grit to get through an SBA process, you don't have the grit to run a business. There's no question about that. And I've had people who, they get through the process, and it's funny because now they realize, holy cow, this is a dream, this is a dream, this is a dream. Now it's real, I got this approval, and oh my God, I've got to quit my job and open a business. It's so funny when it switches over to that. And did you have that moment at all?
Yeah, it came a little bit more abruptly for me. I was working at a country club, and basically the end of the road was coming up real fast, and we got delayed, and billing and
right.
approvals from the liquor control and
right.
local approvals, county approvals. And once we finally got all those approvals, I was like, oh man, my time that I put in for notice, even though it was months, is about to come up. So I didn't have that cushion. We were going to open here, and basically I had a business partner at the time,
mm-hmm.
and this is another one of those, the stars align, and I was going to work over there for the last month or whatever was left in my notice, and the opening was delayed, so I was basically over here right away. But it was a blessing in disguise, because had I not been, a lot of those bumps and bruises
right.
that I wouldn't have noticed directly. It would have been more of like somebody telling me what was going on, or I would have got over here too late because I was earlier over there, so I would have been over here for the main portion
right.
of the time. But again, it would have been a lot of stress on the family, just going from business to business for a month. And it worked out to where I was able to be right over here on our grand opening, aside of having surgery on my wrist, because when we were building the place, I fell off of that.
But hey, I mean, those are the things you need to do. My guess is you were doing that, and I remember one time opening a restaurant years ago, owned a title company at the time, and was opening a restaurant. And I'm thinking, I literally left a closing, I'm in a suit, now I'm in sweats, and I was hanging from the rafters, literally hanging, because you have the ladder, and well, I'm just going to go a little further, and we're pulling down ceiling tiles. So I find myself, that's an entrepreneur. You're in this world, this business world, at 3 o'clock, and then at 6 o'clock that night, you're in sweats with fiberglass all over you, pulling down the ceiling.
I can see one of those memes or those motivational posters for entrepreneurs.
Right. That's the life. I think you're a great example. So the example we're giving here, obviously, is a brewery, but it's small business in general. You have to hustle. You have to have that duality of, hey, I've got my regular job until I can open this thing up. I'm dealing with a restaurant right now. The guy's doing a lot of pop-ups. He's doing a lot of wedding stuff while we're getting to the point that his restaurant is finished and he's ready to open. You have to do what you have to do. Clients can be excuse factories at times. And well, I was going to, but that's a decision. Again, anybody watching this, it is a life, whether it's a manufacturing company, whether it's a brewery, whether it's an ice cream shop, whether you're going to be a real estate investor. You've got to make that commitment. You've got to have that belief in yourself. And if you do, you can weather any storm. And I think you've weathered those storms.
It's rolling with the punches as well. There's going to be a lot of surprises along the way, and that really takes a lot of wind out of your sails, and again makes you what you refer to as an excuse factory.
Right.
I would have done this, but it's look at the way of the world right now. Everybody was making up for vacations. We would have really good numbers right now, but we're not getting as many butts in the seats. Well, that's kind of up to us at this point to adjust to what's going on in the world to get the butts in the seats.
Right, that's how business works. So I've always described it as, I tend to use a lot of sports analogies. If I'm sitting back on my heels waiting for something to happen, I'm going to get bowled over. If I'm in hockey, football, whatever, if I'm on the balls of my feet ready to attack and ready to make a move, good things happen. You find opportunities. You might find, and I know you've done this, hey, there's another brewery that's going out of business and their brew system is at a huge discount. Well, you put yourself in a position where you can go grab that. Always kind of working and pushing forward as opposed to waiting for things to happen. You kind of came through a final phase recently. We hadn't talked for a while, everything was rolling. and you called me up and said, hey, I've got something that, I'm hoping you can help me out with. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that was I don't want to say the final piece to my puzzle, but to really take over this on my own.
Right.
From even though our investors were small scale and weren't really active in coming in, they're just backseat investors or whatever they're called, which.
And thank God they were there.
Yep.
Yep.
100%. Yeah, because it never would have happened.
Right. Yep.
So at that point, I said, Dennis, what do I got to do to buy out these investors? How can we make this happen? And that's where, and had I not called them, I guarantee that, because the way that we finally worked out how to do it, we look at our options and we finalized on how we would do it, and then it's all right. It's time to get going on it. So here's what you need to do. Here's what I'm going to do, and in that process, we made it happen. And it was similar to the purchase of the building, which we did talk about, but the same thing is to where if I was just to go at it, especially trying to run day-to-day operations here, I needed that, all right, here's our bullet point list, here's what we need to do, here's your first step, here's my first step. And working with IBC got us through that, plus the knowledge of during the pandemic, you had some workers who knew these specific, either the ERTC, the
EIDL,
the ERTC
PPP,
credits,
the ERTC, all those acronyms, yes, but all of the pandemic.
But if he's got specific people who know these inside and out, then he can lean on them, and then he can work with me on the things that he knows inside and out. And then if he needs to come over and talk about beer, then he can talk to me about what I know inside and out. But the same thing holds true, is that you guys had the knowledge that I needed to get through all those processes.
Well, and you talk about, okay, you have some things you need, and I always say you have homework for me. And they're overwhelmed. In fact, it's funny, today I have a startup, a meeting with a startup, and it's a really cool concept. And they're like, my head's gonna explode. I've tried to do a business plan, it doesn't work, I can't get the information, the numbers don't come out right. Talking to a bank is intimidating, and it's like, it's all gonna be okay. It's all gonna be okay. Let's relax, because frankly, I've done this a million times. I know how it's gonna turn out. I've looked at your numbers, you're gonna be fine. We'll clean it up. But they're going to have some things they need to do. We have systems and processes for everything, as every small business should, as I know you do here. And okay, let's go through step by step by step. And to me, and I'll always put it on the whiteboard, it's the financials. Everything starts with financials. You can have a great concept, you can have great personality, you can have any of that stuff, but if you don't know your numbers and how those are going to work, and then oftentimes people will say, well, my business is very complicated, I don't know that you fully understand it. Well, let me ask you a question. Do you have revenue? Well, yeah, okay. Maybe even a couple of sources of revenue. Yeah, okay, there's our top line, there's our revenue. Now let's go down that income statement. Your cost of goods sold. Well, yeah, we have, beer, and we have napkins, and we have, food, and okay, so there's your cost of goods sold expenses. Do you have general administrative? Well, what's that? Your accountant, your utilities, all of those, your insurance, your taxes. Well, yeah. Okay, sounds like every other business in the world, so let's put those down, let's quantify those. Now, let's do some data research. What are other businesses like that, doing? What are their numbers? So let's not say it's going to be the hockey stick effect. I'm going to do this year, and then after that I'm making millions. No, you're not, because nobody does that. Maybe you're a unicorn, but probably not. So let's figure that out, and let's figure what a rational increase in numbers would be. And we extrapolate that out, and then we build a narrative around it. How do we get that business? Is it through marketing? Is it because we have better beer? We understand, that you talked earlier about knowing the neighborhood, knowing the area, what they want. Again, same thing with manufacturing, same thing with real estate, any of that stuff. So that's the process we try and bring, and obviously you work really well with us on that process.
Really not to simplify anything, but when you tell your client, it'll be okay, especially the ones that are going to succeed.
Right.
Like, no, it'll be okay. Let's take step one.
Right.
Let's put it on the whiteboard.
Right.
Every time we've had a meeting, I've walked out of there feeling better than when I went in. And I'd say that's
good. Well, and what's the old saying? How do you eat an elephant? One piece at a time. and it's the way it has to be. And again, we set it up. We're going to go through these, and then we'll hit these milestones. And you know, there is probably no greater compliment than that. You know, that's what we do. We're here to help everybody through the process. And I've had so many people say, we never would have got here without you. That is like scoring a touchdown, or, you know, it's the best. So what does the future hold for you?
Well, like I said, once we're fully expanded here, which we're about there, it's just now it's tightening the bolts of these. There's a front patio. We're moving our small kitchen over to where it should have been in the first place.
Right.
We're putting our keg room directly behind here, so we don't have all these long
Right.
lines. And every time you change your keg, you waste a growler of beer. You know, it's a half gallon of beer,
Right.
You know, and you look at that as well. Now you look at it as 4 pints, and you look at it as X amount of dollars.
Well, let me interrupt you there. I don't know. Well, so maybe you would have, but most certainly, and I do a lot of breweries, but I do a lot of small business. You're speaking in terms of somebody who's a veteran. You know your numbers down to, you think of it that.
Yeah.
And stretching those lines across, that's a big deal. And that beer is going to get warm. And you consulted with me before on a business that we transferred and got a liquor license for them. And it was just interesting watching you and where you're at today, juxtaposed against this guy who was starting out. But that's why you're still here, and I'll let you continue, but those are points that I didn't want to let go by.
Sure.
It's just so cool to hear you talk in those terms, because you're a brewer, but you've become a financial guy, because you don't have a choice, right? You need to know your numbers. Any entrepreneur, if you bury your head in the sand and you say, well, you know, I'll talk to my accountant every quarter or at the end of the year, bad things are going to happen. You need to make decisions based on that, because that little bit, okay, we're throwing away pints, they add up and add up and add up to maybe the difference between making money or losing money, or being able to continue and expand, or just being mired in mediocrity forever. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you nailed it. The from just wasting the pints here, when you change over to a different beer on one tap, you used to look at a growler as like, cool, give me a good buzz at a party, right? No, you don't look at that anymore.
That's money.
The cost of the glass, you know how much every ounce of liquid in there costs. And then you talk about your efficiency and your yield in the back. You know, when we had brewers, we were yielding 15-20% less per batch than when I took over brewing. And then because you're just finding all these finite ways, and you actually care to improve versus you're just, you know. And that's where if you get the right people, you train them right, you're going to have you working back there, at least a reflection.
Well, I think that's important, because, and I know you did kind of take over that process, but you have some assistant brewers and some people to help you out. I think it's important. I mean, we all know, every entrepreneur, you can't do it all yourself.
Right.
And if you're trying to do it all yourself, you're going to fail.
Yes.
You need to know it and understand it and be able to check in on it and help out when needed. But you need good people in each position doing their thing, so you can grow your business, expand this place as much as it can.
It obviously starts from the top down.
Right.
You know, you've heard all the cliches.
But they're cliches for a reason.
Correct. So not to get off track for expansion, but again, we get all this done here, and which is, like I said, it's imminent, and we really wanted to really start branching out, because what we want to do is take our concept here, and when we move this into a new building, a different footprint, similar concept, but we can utilize what we have here per state laws and everything, because we can feed the new place with some of what we have here, meaning the next place we want to make our cash cow, our money maker.
Right.
You know, this one we can get by, we can pay the bills, we can keep the lights on, and once some loans start getting paid off, yeah, it starts to make more money. But it's a slower mover than we want the next location.
Sure.
So the next business plan goes in, and we're obviously going to work with IDC in this, but when we start putting these numbers together, we start putting our concept, we've kind of got a concept in line with what we want to do. I'm sure it'll change a little bit as it
always
evolves.
does, yeah.
And really move into another location, and you take all the demographics far enough away from here, but
Yep.
close enough, and
Don't want to cannibalize, but don't want too far to share resources.
correct,
Yep.
or to where we're sharing resources, and then and really make that our money making business and expand from there even. But that, we don't want to look too far ahead, because what many people will do, especially in this industry, is everything's going okay, so let's build a production facility.
Right. A little's good, a lot's better.
Yeah, they
And it
just
crushes.
keep opening things, and then everything shuts down.
Yep.
Closes because they can't, or the things change a little bit in business, and they're not getting as much business as they were the previous year. But wait another year, they could have had more business and opened one.
Well, and having capital, having cash flow. So 2 points, going back to the original SBA loan discussion. Almost always, we try and give a line of credit to the borrower. We try and build in working capital into the loan and get them a line of credit, because nothing kills an entrepreneur more than lack of capital. And then it's, okay, well, let's cut this out. Well, we're not gonna have 20 taps here, we're gonna have 3, and it just gets to a point where you can't make money, you get strangled. Cash flow is king. Again, another cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. So oftentimes it's, let's start building the coffers up. Let's get in a good position so we can open the next one. We'll still borrow the money, because that cost is gonna be better than if we reduced all our capital, but let's still leave ourselves enough capital to run it with.